perhaps the most important role that Concord has played in the 20th century goes back to this myth of the citizen soldier. The early Cold War produced a narrative of the revolution that was fundamentally about ordinary people fighting for individual liberty against a tyrannical centralized government, right? And you can see how Concord fit really neatly into that narrative. And the focus on the role of the yeomanry in the quote-unquote Concord fight gave that story real salience to anti-communist groups and far-right militias. The most prominent of these was the Minutemen. There are many, many militias named the Minutemen. And this one started in 1960 by Robert Depew, who was a businessman from Independence, Missouri. And the group described themselves as a national organization of patriotic Americans who are preparing themselves as a last line of defense against communism. And that meant that they were preparing themselves to wage guerrilla warfare against the United States government, right? They believed that there was a secret conspiracy, this goes back to Bob last night, by sort of liberals and communists who wanted to turn over U.S. sovereignty to the United Nations. And Depew's Minutemen claimed to have thousands of members just in Southern California alone, quote, each with a rifle and 100 rounds of ammunition and 800 with machine guns ready to stop the group within our government that are doing away with the Constitution. Fortunately, the group declined shortly thereafter in sort of the mid-60s when its several leaders were arrested for failing to register for a sex offense. But the 1990s witnessed a real revival of these right-wing militias, right, and the militia movement, particularly in the wake of the FBI siege at Waco, right, which of course occurred on April 19th, right, 1993, and it's 2 years later to the day, right, that Timothy McVeigh sets off a bomb at the federal building in Oklahoma City on April 19th, 1995, that kills 168 people. And to these militia groups, which really have enjoyed another resurgence in the last 10 years or so, Concord has represented an anti-government uprising, right? Led by a vanguard of ordinary citizen soldiers. And they very much see themselves and their actions as part of an unbroken chain that goes directly back to the North Bridge. So in conclusion, Concord really has had this sort of unusual role in and relationship to the popular memory of the Revolution. It served primarily as a metaphor, and it conjures up images that are embedded in generations of the American historical imagination. The citizen soldier, abolitionism and its relationship to the Revolution, especially the Declaration, America's emergence as a global power in the late 19th century, right-wing cold warriors and far-right militias, as well as far-left anti-corporate socialists, which is in the paper if you want to know what that's all about. But just as with the Revolution itself, Concord and the historical event that played out here has had this sort of unique hold on the American imagination. And in the 2.5 centuries since, it's really been a tool for Americans who have wanted to define and redefine themselves and the nation and its place in the world. And just as with the memory of the Revolution, and like with revolutions themselves, the memory of Concord really has had many unintended consequences for our political culture, for better and worse.